Ben 10. Carnitrix without downsides. Chapter 1. Late at night. In the woods, at the center of a large crater left by an impact. The alien watch is stuck on my wrist. I can't get it off. A brown-haired boy named Benjamin was anxiously shaking the glowing watch on his arm. He looked up and called out, "Zach, do you have any idea how to get this off?" "Ben, maybe this watch chose you. Could it be some kind of divine artifact?" A black-haired boy with messy hair as handsome as the readers, spoke with envy in his eyes. He was Zachary, or Zach for short. He had transmigrated into this world 11 years ago, adopted by Gwen's parents, and had grown up as her childhood friend. In his previous life, he had been a huge fan of Ben 10, so naturally, he longed to experience the story firsthand to witness the Omnitrix with his own eyes. That's why he joined Grandpa Max's road trip. He managed to insert himself into the canon plot so he could check off each iconic location as he went. Even though I knew it was never meant to be mine, I still can't help but feel a little disappointed. Zach let out a soft sigh, his voice tinged with longing. Becoming an alien hero had always been his childhood dream, but he didn't have Max's genes for the Omnitrix to pick him. Ding. Detecting the host's strong unwillingness activating the Omnitrix template system. Template system successfully activated. Zach was stunned at first, then a slow smile crept onto his face. I knew it. No protagonist is complete without a golden finger. Alright, system, what's your function? He asked in his mind. Ding. As the name implies, this system allows the host to access Omnitrix templates. As long as the host increases the progress of a given template from 1 to 100, the next one can be unlocked. There are two ways to gain template progress. 1. Engage in combat using the template watch. 2. Alter the course of the plot. Holy crap. Zach froze. So if I fully master one Omnitrix template, I can unlock even more. Even web novels wouldn't dare go this far with their cheat systems. This system was downright terrifying. Ding. The host currently has one opportunity to draw a template. Draw now. Zach didn't hesitate. He clasped his hands together, eyes shining with determination. I want to be a hero, so, please give me the Ultimatrix. Congratulations to the host for drawing the Carnitrix template. A virtual light screen appeared before Zach's eyes, visible only to him. Host. Zachary, Zach. Age. 11. Template. Carnitrix. Transformation duration. 10 minutes. Cooldown duration. 10 minutes. Progress. 1/100th. Skills. None. Items. None. Aliens unlocked. Initial 9. Physical status. Kid level physique. System, is this my punishment for asking for the Ultimatrix? Zach forced a strained smile. Thanks, I suddenly don't feel like transforming anymore. He wasn't trying to die out here. Ding. As the host gradually increases template progress, the Carnitrix will unlock more features. The host's physique and mental energy will also improve, allowing you to perfectly control all Carnitrix powers. Zach took a deep breath, trying to calm himself down, and began to think things through. In other words, even though the Carnitrix on his wrist was a limited version, he could still control it perfectly. As long as he used it in battle and altered the original storyline, he could gradually unlock its abilities and enhance his own physique. Eventually, he would fully master the Carnitrix. Thinking about it this way, the Carnitrix was awesome. An alien X that doesn't require the consent of its other personalities. That's terrifying in the best way. Whoosh. In the distance, a flash of light burst through the trees. Ben, now transformed into Heat Blast, was gleefully playing with fire, hurling flames in every direction. So this is where changing the plot begins, huh? Zach took a deep breath, his eyes lighting up as he looked toward Ben with a flicker of excitement. The waves of heat rolling off Heat Blast made Zach squint and blink constantly, even bringing tears to his eyes. Zach, it's me, don't be scared. Ben turned around, raised both hands, and quickly tried to explain. You looked distracted just now, so I activated this awesome watch and transformed, and then I turned into this. Wait, huh? Why do you have a watch on your wrist too? Surprised, Zach instinctively looked down at his wrist. The infamous Carnitrix was indeed bound tightly to his left arm. Its spiked, biomechanical tendrils didn't pierce his skin, instead, they gently wrapped around it like a living brace. This was true control over the Carnitrix. You, try pressing the screen. Ben suddenly lit up with excitement, clenching his fists. Come on, press it. Transform. Ben, I've rehearsed this scene 1,000 times as a kid. Zack gave a knowing smile and confidently reached out to press the Carnitrix's central dial. The screen rotated open, and the silhouette of XLR8 flickered into view. As he tapped the figure, a pulse of blood-red light flared from the device. This glow, it's different from mine. Ben muttered, his eyes fixed on the red light. He swallowed slowly. Why did he suddenly feel a chill in his chest? As the red light began to fade, the alien figure within slowly revealed itself. A tall, slender figure emerged completely black, streaked with glowing blue markings. He's kinda cool looking. Ben muttered in awe. Is that so? Zack's voice came out cold and distorted, as he slowly lifted his sleek, pointed head. His dark, emotionless eyes locked directly onto Ben. A mouth full of razor-sharp, blade-like teeth curled into a chilling grin, exuding a faint scent of blood. His entire face was more terrifying than a horror movie ghost. XLR8 Carnitrix variant, so Ben, do I look handsome? Kiki tilde tilde. Ben stood frozen. His heart raced like a car engine roaring to life. His expression turned blank, and his lips trembled uncontrollably. Why you, what did you do with Zack? He suddenly shouted in horror. Ben, it's me. Don't be afraid. Zack was momentarily stunned, then quickly stepped forward, trying to explain. As he spoke, he forced a friendly smile. Wah! Ben's eyes went wide in terror as he saw Zack approaching, still wearing that eerie, unnatural grin, like a killer stalking his next victim. He let out a frightened scream and stumbled backward, tumbling to the ground in a panic. Are you okay? Zack instinctively reached out with his sharp, alien claws, trying to help Ben up. Don't come near me. Ben finally lost it. With a panicked yell, his body ignited in flames, and he blasted off at full speed. Whoosh! Wreathed in fire, Ben rocketed into the sky, retreating into the distance. Even as he flew away, he kept his eyes locked fearfully on Zack. Don't follow me. Zack immediately took off, the wheel-like joints on his ankles spinning into motion. XLR8's incredible speed activated as he sprinted after Ben. Despite moving at blistering velocity, the world around him remained crystal clear. This was XLR8's enhanced dynamic vision at work. So that a train runs through Robin. Yeah, that's definitely on purpose. Oh no, he's coming. He really did kill Zack. Ben's mind spiraled into panic, his expression crumbling as he imagined the worst. He tried to accelerate even more, but bang! Ben slammed straight into a hillside at full speed. His body bounced and thudded along the slope. Thump, thump. He rolled down, crashing into one rock after another, until he finally slammed into a large boulder at the bottom. And promptly passed out. Zack skidded to a stop beside him, staring down in silence. I just wanted to tell you, to watch where you're going. His first time using the Carnitrix. It felt ridiculously exhilarating. Ding. Host has defeated Heatblast and altered the original plotline where Heatblast sets the mountain on fire. Template progress +1. Carnitrix IMG. Carnitrix XLR8. Ding. Template progress. 2/100ths. Unlocking Carnitrix variant. Error Ghost Freak. A glint of excitement appeared in Zack's eyes, his smile twisting with anticipation. I can even unlock Ghost Freak. As expected of the Carnitrix template. Perfect control over the Carnitrix. Meant doing what the original Omnitrix never could. Also, Zack muttered to himself, I remember that all Carnitrix aliens are supposed to be weaker than the originals due to corrupted or incomplete DNA. So, is Ghost Freak also a bit weaker? He asked silently in his mind. Affirmative, the system replied coldly. But the Carnitrix variant of Ghost Freak is an exception. Wait, so it's just as strong. Error Ghost Freak stronger. Zack inhaled sharply, resisting the urge to jump again on the spot. Instead, he turned and quietly walked over to wake Ben. Ben slowly opened his eyes, only to find Zack's ghostly alien face just inches from his own. He let out a piercing scream. His eyes rolled back, and he nearly fainted again. The monster in front of him looked even scarier than the clown he feared most. Zack looked at Ben, paused for a moment, and said slowly, he tilde get up in 3 seconds, or I'll tear up your precious Sumo Slammer's cards, and then touch your controller with potato chip covered fingers. Monster. Ben muttered, but he slowly stood up, flames still flickering around his body. His face was filled with fear, but his tone had become resolute. I'll never let you lay a hand on my two-dimensional friends. The wrath of the 2D world. Boom. Boom. With a strange sound, two beams of light shot through the trees, and the silhouettes of two kids emerged from the glow. Zack and Ben exchanged a glance. I told you it was me. Do you believe me now? Zack waved casually, sounding exasperated. Oh my goodness. Ben took a deep breath, stunned. Your alien is like some kind of demon king from the Sumo Slamers game. Compared to Zack's alien, his own transformation seemed like a well-behaved kid. Alright, let's go tell Grandpa about this. Zack patted Ben's shoulder and started walking him back toward the campsite. Judging by the timing, Vilgax's drone bots should be arriving soon. At the campsite, an adult and 3 children sat around the campfire as one of the boys animatedly recounted the events with dramatic flair. So that's what happened. I got scared unconscious by Zack's alien total demon king vibes and then I realized it was him and walked back with him. Ben spoke with lingering fear, wiping cold sweat from his forehead. He was genuinely afraid he'd have nightmares tonight. Haha, dweeb, the watches you and Zack picked up are definitely cool, and your imagination's even cooler tilde. Gwen teased him, clearly not taking any of it seriously. If there really was an alien demon king, I'd love to see it for myself. Don't go crying and wetting your pants when you do. Ben shot back immediately, puffing up as his competitive streak kicked in. And just like that, the familiar rivalry between them reignited into playful bickering. Meanwhile, on the other side of the fire, a burly old man in a Hawaiian shirt, Grandpa Max muttered in disbelief. Did my 2 grandkids just take a casual stroll to Azimuth's place or something? They both ended up with Omnitrixes. That's insane. And then, Grandpa Max looked at the seemingly harmless Zack in surprise. What exactly do you mean by Demon King? Haha, it just looked a bit intimidating, that's all. Zack laughed awkwardly. He had just made his debut and he was already being called a Demon King. Not long after. To prove Gwen wrong, Ben raised his wrist and activated the little broken watch, which had just finished cooling down. I'll transform right now. Still don't believe me. Ben, how about you transform into the same alien I used earlier? Zack grinned and pointed at the Omnitrix, clearly having some fun with it. Besides, altering the plot like this would help him earn more template progress anyway. Alright, that guy's called XLR8. Yours was like Mon XTR or something. Ben's naming sense was still as creative as ever. He twisted the Omnitrix dial until he found XLR8. With a confident slap, whoosh, a green light burst out. A tall alien with a sleek, streamlined build and a sharp, serious expression rose from the glow beside the campfire. He looked at Gwen, and gave her a calm smile. Gwen immediately screamed, grabbed a wooden stick from the ground, and swung it toward Ben's head. You actually dare to hit an alien. Ben was stunned, raising his arm to block the blow. It's me. Ben, you nerd. I didn't think what you said was actually true. At that moment, Gwen finally and fully accepted the reality aliens really did exist. But now, both Gwen and Grandpa Max turned their attention to Zack, curiosity deepening in their eyes. They had seen an aliens now, and honestly, it wasn't that scary. But this so-called alien demon king Zack had transformed into. What on earth would that look like? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, in the sky above, the sound of high-speed aircraft roared overhead. Beams of red infrared light dropped from above, targeting the foreheads of Grandpa Max, Zack, and the others. In an instant, Grandpa Max moved on instinct. He lunged forward, tackling Gwen and Zack to the ground. Ben, meanwhile, looked up at the night sky, his expression suddenly shifted. There were no stars in the darkness above. Instead, 5 octopus-like drones hovered overhead. Each drone was armed with military-grade turrets, their infrared sensors locking onto Ben in an instant. Omnitrix signal detected. Hey, tin cans. Ben muttered as he slowly stood, staring at the drones. This is private property. No drones allowed. Zoom, zoom, zoom. The turrets on the drones began glowing red, laser cannons humming with energy. Ben's playful expression vanished. With a sharp twist of his feet, he slid sideways and bolted for cover. Boom! 5 beams of laser fire ripped through the air, exploding just behind him. The blasts tore apart trees and lit up the night with violent shockwaves. The firepower was intense enough to make his skin crawl. There were way too many of them. I'm still here, Ben. Zack stood up calmly, already prepared. He raised the Carnitrix, its surface glowing ominously. Zack tapped the Carnitrix screen, twisted the dial to Ghost Freak, and slammed it down without hesitation. At that exact moment, the drones suddenly halted their attack. For a second, they seemed confused, their sensors locked onto Zack. How could there be 2 Omnitrix energy signals? Wait, this one signal was even stronger than the other. That's what Ben called Demon King. Grandpa Max and Gwen both looked up at Zack in disbelief. As the red light washed over the area, a massive Ghost Freak slowly floated into view. His form towered nearly 2 meters tall. His claws, shaped like Grim Reaper scythes, radiated a sense of raw destruction. But the most horrifying part. Zack's chest looked torn open, a massive hole from which dozens of crimson-red tentacles and bone-like spikes writhed and pulsed outward. His entire presence looked like something pulled straight from a Cthulhuian nightmare. Gwen, Grandpa, it's all right now. He tilde. Zack slowly lifted his distorted, monstrous face, his skull still twitching and rotating slightly as he spoke. Thud. Gwen dropped to the ground, completely unconscious. Grandpa Max caught her in his arms, then turned his head away without a word. Zack, go handle it. Ben was far too optimistic. This wasn't some demon king. This was a demon god. All right then, Zack murmured, looking up at the drones overhead. Let's see just how strong Ghost Freak really is. He could feel the terrifying energy pulsing through his alien form. It surged in his chest and limbs like liquid power. To him, those 5 drones floating in the sky were nothing more than scrap metal. Ghost Freak. Zack controlled his alien body, breaking free from Earth's gravity as he soared into the sky toward the 5 hovering drones. The drones immediately locked onto him, turrets swiveling into position. Bang! 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 Deep red laser beams cut through the night, blazing with searing heat as they blasted toward Zack. His mutated, bloated form wasn't exactly built for agile dodging. There was no way to evade that many beams. Try this. He thrust both arms outward, tearing open the gaping wound in his chest even further. Blood-red tentacles burst forth. Dozens of crimson tendrils flailed and lashed through the air, violently slamming into the incoming laser blasts. Each laser beam was shattered into fragments on impact, completely neutralized by the monstrous tentacles. Those things are tougher than steel. You've got to be kidding me. Grandpa Max stood below, staring in disbelief. No way, this one's even scarier than the last. Ben's jaw dropped as he stared up at Zack, horrified. Wait a second, the alien that scared me unconscious was the cutest looking one on your Carnitrix, Zack. Zack continued rising into the air, steadily improving his control over the Carnitrix's writhing tentacles. They no longer flailed about chaotically, instead, they tightened into a coordinated formation, forming a shield that cleanly intercepted the incoming laser blasts. As a result, not even the smoke from the beams reached him. Every shot was blocked by that blood-red barrier. Once Zack and the drones reached the same altitude, he suddenly appeared to falter. His tentacles spread wide, and many of them began retracting as if he were losing strength. The drones immediately seized the opening, launching a full barrage of their remaining laser energy at him. Oh, I've got the hang of it. You can't touch me now. He tilde. Zack lifted his head slowly, his eyes cold, and a creepy smile spread across his face. Whoosh! His body shimmered, and then suddenly became translucent. The lasers passed straight through him, flying harmlessly into the distance before erupting in explosions far away. Target vanished. One by one, the drones ceased firing. They could no longer detect Zack's energy signal. Game time's over. Zack floated steadily in front of the drones, completely calm. Whoosh! The moment his flickering, semi-transparent form solidified and dematerialization ended, the drones instantly locked onto him. Splat! Zack suddenly tore open his chest, and a wave of tentacles burst outward, snapping through the air like giant fly swatters, smashing into the drones with brutal force. The terrifying military drones were swatted away like insects. slamming into the ground and trees, exploding into pieces on impact. The most outrageous part. One of the drones exploded right in front of Ben, nearly taking him out too. Hey, Zach, you almost blew me up too. Ben flinched and shouted, still shaken. Oh. Zach's horrifying ghost-like face turned toward Ben, and he muttered with genuine remorse, sorry about that. Ben's body trembled slightly as he lowered his head. No. My bad. Huh. Why you apologizing too? Alright, let's finish off the rest of, They're all gone. Zach glanced around. The area had gone completely silent, unnaturally quiet. Not a single drone remained in sight. Just now, in an instant. Had he really wiped out all the drones? Not even swatting 5 flies is that fast. The rest are all over here. Ben's mouth twitched as he pointed to the scattered remains, robot heads and debris littering the ground around his feet. He suddenly had a weird feeling. If he kept running his mouth, his head might end up rolling next. Ding. Host has defeated 5 drones and caused Vilgax to become wary. Template progress +1. Template progress. 3/100ths. Physical abilities significantly enhanced. Significant enhancement of physical functions. Zach was taken aback. Sounds great, but I don't feel anything different in my body. Ding. This reward will activate once the host reverts to human form. Zach nodded in sudden realization. Got it. He didn't plan to waste the remaining transformation time. Turning toward XLR8, he smiled as gently as he could manage. Unfortunately, that demonic grin stretched all the way to his ears. Ben immediately snapped to attention, instinctively tense. Ben, let's try to get more familiar with our alien forms now, so we don't panic when the real fights start. Zach offered kindly. All right, Ben shouted, before bolting off at full speed. After the two spent some time adjusting to their alien bodies, their transformation timers finally ran out. Zach returned to the ground as red light shimmered around him. And the moment he reverted back to human form, he could feel it. The strength in his limbs surged. His movements became lighter. Every step felt more powerful than before. Even his muscles had visibly developed, bulging slightly beneath his shirt. So this is the physical boost from the template. This is awesome. Zach clenched his fists in excitement, then walked over to Grandpa Max and helped him up, actually managing to lift half of his weight with ease. Haha. Grandpa's fine, don't worry about me. Grandpa Max gave Zach a satisfied look, nodding with approval. You're getting strong fast, almost as strong as I was back in my prime. That's strong. Zach muttered under his breath, then called out in his mind, System, open the template. Host. Zachary, Zach. Age. 11. Template. Carnitrix. Transformation duration. 10 minutes. Cooldown duration. 10 minutes. Progress. 3/100ths. Skills. None. Items. None. Aliens unlocked. Initial 10. Physical status. Strong adult level. Holy crap. Zach's physical status had jumped straight to strong adult level. Even better, if his base form grew stronger, then his Carnitrix aliens would also become more powerful as a result. This upgrade wasn't just personal, it was a full team buff. Absolutely satisfying. But what's this about Vilgax becoming wary? What kind of trouble is that octopus head going to stir up now? Zach narrowed his eyes slightly, a sense of alertness rising in his chest. Why is Bookworm still unconscious? Ben asked with mild concern. She was just scared by all the fighting earlier. Grandpa Max answered, quickly shifting the topic to avoid hurting Zach's feelings. I'll wake her up. Zach snapped back to the moment, then walked over to Gwen with a determined look on his face. I'll use artificial respiration. Meanwhile, aboard the hybrid warship. Inside a biocultivation pod aboard the warship, the incomplete Vilgax stared intently at the large electronic display in the command hall, his face twisted in rage. The screen was replaying the footage on loop, the brutal destruction of all 5 drones, by Zach. 5 elite drones, completely annihilated. What kind of monster is this? Vilgax took a deep, shuddering breath, his eyes fixed on Zach's horrifying ghostfreak form. He couldn't help but mutter the words aloud. He truly hadn't expected there to be 2 Omnitrixes. And especially not one like this, a version he'd never seen before. A version that was downright terrifying. Even Vilgax, a monster by anyone's standard, was calling him a monster. Send more forces to Earth. I want to test this creature's actual combat capabilities. At this point, Vilgax's goal wasn't just to recover the Omnitrix. Now, he had a new priority, to evaluate the true power of this corrupted alien tech, this Carnitrix. Azimuth, you sneaky old fool, Vilgax growled. Secretly developing something like this. Yeah, and the guy claims to love peace. Azimuth, I swear, I really want to curse that smug little genius. Around him, Vilgax's subordinates all began cursing Azimuth's name, calling him a fraud and a hypocrite. Artificial respiration. With that nerd. Zack, you're seriously messed up. Ben looked at Gwen with exaggerated disgust, then turned back to Zack. Zack just smiled and replied, hey. Not only was I going to give her artificial respiration, I was thinking of transforming into an alien to do it. Bigger lungs. Might wake her up faster. Ah. I'm awake. Gwen suddenly opened her eyes, still visibly shaken. She looked at Zack with lingering fear. You've already changed back, right? Please don't come near me in that terrifying form again. I knew you were fooling it. Zack rolled his eyes. He had only said that to scare her. Gwen had been pretending to be unconscious, too afraid to open her eyes in case that Carnitrix alien was still standing there. That terrifying alien, it's just way too creepy, Gwen muttered, her face red with embarrassment. She'd completely lost face in front of Ben just now. TCH. For once, Ben didn't mock her. Instead, he nodded solemnly. I'm with the bookworm on this one. Alright, Zack, Ben, let's not get careless, Grandpa Max said, pulling the conversation back to reality with a serious tone. I've got a feeling those mechanical freaks are after your watches. And if that's true, this probably won't be the last time something like this happens. Zack took a deep breath, clenching his fists. Don't worry, Grandpa. Ben and I will make the most of these watches. If those metal freaks show up again, I'll beat 'em down myself. Ben puffed out his chest. No matter how scary they are, there's no way they're scarier than Zack's alien form. What kind of logic is that? Grandpa Max gave Ben a helpless look, then stood up. Anyway, it's time to prep dinner. You're in for a real nutritious feast. A moment later, he returned, carrying a basin filled with pale, squirming live worms, wriggling like oversized maggots. This is dinner. Zack, tell me we packed real food this time. Ben and Gwen huddled behind Zack in horror, speaking in hushed panic. Relax. Watch the master at work. Zack calmly stepped toward the rust bucket, pulled open a side compartment, and took out a baking pan. Zack placed a handful of worms onto the baking pan, then set it over the campfire, actually roasting worm meat. He even drizzled some dipping sauce over the sizzling worms. Almost instantly, the air filled with the mouthwatering aroma of grilled meat. This smells amazing. Ben's nose twitched wildly as he leaned in closer. Gwen swallowed hard, clearly tempted. Zack, I didn't think anyone could make worms smell this good. Anything can be roasted, Zack said casually. He knew his grandpa's antics from the plot, so he had secretly watched Indonesian cooking videos before coming. He picked up his utensils with satisfaction and was the first to dig in. The others quickly followed, scrambling to grab their share. Hey, this technically counted as another plot change, too. A short while later, the group had devoured their roasted worm feast, put out the fire, and returned the plates and utensils to the rust bucket once they'd cooled. Grandpa Max washed up the cookware, getting ready to call it a night. Zack sat beside the RV's radio, listening to the faint, static-filled signals coming through. He muttered to himself, in the original show, there should be a distress signal around this point, right? He couldn't recall the entire plot of Ben 10, but the first episode was still fresh in his mind. Gwen stood by the open RV door, suddenly pointing into the distance. Why is there smoke over there? What's going on? Zack quickly walked over to Gwen and looked in the direction she was pointing. Just beyond the forest, thick black smoke was billowing into the sky. Looks like something's happened. Everyone, in the RV, seatbelts on. Grandpa Max tossed the still unwashed utensils aside and jumped into the driver's seat without hesitation. Yeah, hero time. Ben shouted excitedly as the rust bucket roared to life, speeding out of the forest campsite and weaving quickly down the narrow dirt paths. At a large roadside campsite, boom! A massive robot stomped through the burning wreckage. It stood over 10 meters tall, its orange-red armor glowing from the heat yet completely unaffected by the flames beneath its feet. From time to time, it raised one of its mechanical claws, Beast. The laser cannon embedded in it unleashed a terrifying energy blast, blowing apart cars and structures one after another. And on the far side of the destruction, a second giant robot was rampaging wildly, tearing through everything in its path without restraint. The terrifying rampage of the two giant robots had left almost no one alive at the campsite. Unlike in the original plot, no one even managed to send out a distress signal over the radio. When will this nightmare end? It's over. The few survivors stared blankly, pale and trembling. Whoosh! The rust bucket skidded to a stop not far from the chaos. Grandpa Max gripped the steering wheel tightly, fury etched into his face. He stared out the window at the two massive machines. Bilgax, to get the watch, he's willing to do anything. Ben, let's go. Zack gave Ben a firm pat on the shoulder. The younger boy was still frozen in a mix of shock and rage. Without hesitation, both of them stood and stepped out of the RV. The cold night wind struck their faces, clearing Ben's head almost instantly. He turned to Zack, eyes filled with determination. Zack, how are we supposed to take down two of those monsters? With this guy, I'll crush them. Zack raised the Carnitrix on his wrist. On its glowing screen, the silhouette of a Petroscipian flickered into motion. His tone was cold, sharp. Two walking heaps of scrap, and they still dared to act so arrogantly. Then, hero time. Ben's voice lacked its usual playfulness. This time, it was edged with deadly seriousness. Both boys slammed down on their watch screens. A flash of red and green light erupted at the same time, colliding briefly before dispersing into the night. Ben transformed into the familiar form from the original series, a muscular Petroscipian in a black and white battle suit, the Omnitrix symbol glowing clearly on his chest. Clean, streamlined, classic. Zack, on the other hand, looked far more intimidating. His Petroscipian form bore sharp, predatory fangs. His face was dominated by sunken deep red eye sockets, with golden pupils glowing ominously within. His body was heavily muscled, layered in sharp, jagged spikes like a walking hedgehog of living crystal. And notably, his color tone was darker than Ben's, and he stood slightly taller as well. As expected. After the system enhanced my physical stats, all of my Carnitrix aliens became stronger, maybe even stronger than their original Omnitrix versions. Zack clenched his fists, feeling the raw, surging power coursing through his crystallized body. If this was just the surface, then in actual combat, he might be even more terrifying. Mine's called Diamond Head, Ben declared proudly. Yours, let's call him Diamond Devil. With the names sorted, Ben turned to inform Grandpa Max and the others. Then, side by side, the two transformed heroes began walking toward the raging inferno of the destroyed campsite. Energy signatures detected, high energy readings. The giant robots suddenly froze. The scanning lights on their heads blinked erratically as they turned their attention to the two advancing figures. And between the two, the majority of their focus locked onto Diamond Devil. Meanwhile, the remaining humans at the scene, briefly filled with hope when they saw Zack approaching, were quickly overtaken by dread. Oh God, the real Demon King is here. Their legs gave out beneath them as they stared at Zack's terrifying alien face, shaking, pale, some even half believing they were about to be eaten alive. Bang! As the two figures stepped into the inferno, Ben calmly glanced at the massive robot on the left. Zack, I'll take the one on the left. The right one's yours. No objections here. Zack's crystalline spikes extended slightly as he spoke, excitement evident in his voice. Bang! They both stomped the ground and dashed forward toward their respective targets. Zack moved so fast he left afterimages behind. Seeing this, the robot facing Zack immediately raised its arm and locked onto his path. Shoo! Rumble! A powerful laser beam erupted from its cannon, slamming into Zack mid-charge. Smoke and debris exploded into the air on impact. Zack! Ben shouted, worried, but he was already caught up in his own battle, narrowly dodging a barrage of laser blasts from the other robot. All he could do was pray that Zack was okay. Bang! 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 The massive robot advanced step by step, approaching the cloud of smoke. It lifted its arm and swept the smoke aside with a heavy wave. Zack lay motionless on the ground. Target neutralized. The giant robot's sensor light flickered. After scanning Zack's still body, it concluded he was down and confidently reached forward to grab him. Without hesitation, it lifted Zack's body and held it up in front of itself. Hey tilde tilde. Zack's golden pupils suddenly gleamed, bright and sharp. A twisted smile curled across his face. Of course, that smile wasn't his fault, it was just part of Diamond Devil's terrifying design. Warning. Abnormal energy spike detected. The robot instantly recognized something was wrong and tried to toss Zack away. Too late. Rumble. A barrage of crystalline spikes exploded outward from Zack's body like an array of unyielding spears. They pierced straight through the robot's hands, through its head, and even clean through its armored torso. With just one move, Zack completely destroyed the giant robot. Its massive frame staggered, systems failing, before it dropped Zack and collapsed backward. Zack landed lightly on the ground, his body unscathed. The crystal spikes retracted smoothly, leaving behind a hardened, flawless armor. He stepped forward calmly, as if strolling through his own backyard, casually approaching the downed machine. His arms morphed into massive diamond great swords, and he began slicing the robot apart piece by piece. The robot, now fully malfunctioning, couldn't even fight back. It had no choice but to endure the dismantling. That robotic monster that was slaughtering us a moment ago. Yeah, he took it down effortlessly. He's a hero. The remaining survivors looked on with wide eyes, relief, awe, and guilt all mixing together. They'd misunderstood him completely. Bang! With one final swing, Zack's twin crystal blades cleaved through the remaining structure. The giant robot crashed down as a pile of broken parts. Done. Zack quietly retracted the great swords. Zack, no, I mean Sir Diamond. From the distance, Grandpa Max called out in amazement, you actually tanked a laser with your body. I know. Zack glanced in Grandpa Max's direction and shouted back, but there are still people hiding nearby. If I deflect that kind of energy blast, someone could die. This wasn't an anime. Every move he made in the real world required caution. Zack, so that's what it was, Gwen murmured. When he phased midair against the drones earlier, it wasn't just for style. He was making sure none of the blasts would hit us. Grandpa Max and Gwen both looked at Zack, moved by the realization. They nodded silently. That had always been Zack's nature, careful, composed, and quietly protective. And yet, he was the one who ended up wielding the terrifying Carnitrix. I feel awful. We're sorry. The surrounding survivors hung their heads in guilt, filled with regret for the things they'd said and assumed earlier. A beat passed. Hasn't Ben finished his fight yet? Zack came to a stop and looked toward Ben, who was locked in a fierce battle with the second giant robot not far away. At first, Ben had been evenly matched with the machine. But over time, he began to adapt to his crystal abilities, gradually turning the tide and putting pressure on the robot. Since you haven't finished it yet, I'll take the kill. A grin tugged at the corner of Zack's mouth. The spikes on his body began to retract inward. Ben, move. Hey tilde. Huh. Ben glanced back, confused, then dove out of the way in alarm. Bang bang bang. Zack thrust out his chest, and dozens of crystal spikes fired forward like Gatling gun rounds, shredding across the surface of the robot. In an instant, the giant machine was riddled with holes, its entire structure pierced. It collapsed onto the ground, barely holding together. It stood there, swaying, damaged even worse than the first robot Zack had taken down. Zack, don't steal my kill. Ben shouted, half annoyed, half impressed. Ben scrambled to his feet and tried to make a move. But Zack was faster. He rushed forward, his palm morphing into a massive crystal hammer, and with one decisive swing, smashed the robot's head into pieces. And just like that, both giant robots had been taken down entirely by Zack. Wah! So strong, Sir Diamond. The two Diamond brothers, one's all about style, the other's pure battle mode. Those two fool machines are finally dead. The remaining survivors began crawling out of hiding, their cheers rising nonstop as they clapped and shouted in relief and excitement. Even Ben, who had been slightly irritated at first, ended up smiling amid the applause. Done. Zack grinned, clenching his fist. Inside, he silently waited for the system notification. Ding. Host has defeated one large robot, assisted in defeating another, and successfully rescued the survivors. Template progress +1. Template progress. 4/100ths. Unlocked. The Mummy. Unlocked. Blitzwolf. Unlocked. Frankenstrike. Holy crap. Zack hadn't expected to unlock 3 alien DNAs at once. With Ghost Freak included, Zack had now unlocked the full set of the Dark Four, ahead of schedule. He was basically Ben 13 already. Later that night, after helping rescue the remaining trapped civilians, both Zack and Ben finally left the burning ruins behind. Even as midnight approached, stories of Zack's heroics were already spreading throughout the local area. Meanwhile, inside the rust bucket, the lights were off. Zack and Gwen were crammed into the top bunk. Down below, Ben slowly opened his eyes and sat up. Those two jerks who bullied me earlier, time to get my revenge. Ben. Zack poked his head down from the top bunk, clearly expecting this. Need backup. Zack, I think if you helped, they'd die of fright on the spot, Ben grinned wickedly. But you gave me an idea, I'll use Ghost Freak to scare those two idiots instead. With that, Ben slipped quietly out of the rust bucket, still smirking. Zack leaned back against the top bunk, staring up at the ceiling in silence, lost in thought. He still had many enemies ahead, mutant freaks, alien tech hunters, and even Vilgax himself. But as long as he kept unlocking the Carnitrix step by step, he'd be ready for all of it. One day, he would defeat Vilgax. And maybe even meet Albedo, face the true form of Vilgax, or stand before the legendary Carnitrix itself. If the Carnitrix universe actually existed. That night, Zack dreamed of just that, a vivid battle between himself and the Carnitrix. Outer space. Vilgax sat in his warship, replaying the battle footage over and over again. He took a deep breath and growled. This monster, not only has superior physical traits, but also terrifying combat instincts. Standard drones can't touch them at all. Lord Vilgax, what should we do? His mechanical subordinates all turned to him, awaiting orders. Vilgax let out a sharp breath, eyes burning with fury. Spend whatever it takes. I want powerful bounty hunters brought in, every last one of them. Hunt those two worms down. The next morning, as dawn broke, Grandpa Max was already up and behind the wheel. As with most older folks, he was a light sleeper and woke early. By the time Zack and the others woke up, the rust bucket had already driven into Washington. You guys go wash up, Max said with a smile, listening to the car radio. I heard there's a new supermarket in Washington that has everything. Let's go stock up on some daily supplies. All right. Everyone responded in unison. A few minutes later, the rust bucket came to a stop in front of a large supermarket. Max, Zack, and the rest climbed out and entered the store. It was packed with people and full of lively energy. I'm gonna go grab some food. You kids go pick out whatever you want. Max then turned and casually wandered off, straight toward the pet and plant section. He didn't even glance in the direction of the food aisles. Ben, Gwen, let's have a look around. Zack naturally took the lead, walking ahead as the three of them began browsing the supermarket. As they passed one particular shelf, Ben suddenly froze in place, eyes locked on a familiar display. These potato chips might have sumo slammer cards inside. The shelf was packed with bags of chips, each one printed with identical sumo wrestler designs. These were limited edition potato chips tied to the Sumo Slammers series, specially marketed to kids. Sumo Slammers was the hottest IP in the world right now. Owning a rare gold foil card from the set would instantly make you the envy of every boy in school. Just like in the original show, Ben immediately went full fanboy mode, ripping open bag after bag of chips, hunting for a Sumo Slammer card. Gwen reluctantly followed, trying to keep him in check. Meanwhile, Zack stood with his hands in his pockets, casually pacing near the supermarket entrance like a security guard on patrol. Hey, Dr. Onimo, you better show up soon and help me grind some progress for this Carnitrix template. Bang! Bang! Suddenly, strange booming noises echoed through the store. The ground even trembled slightly beneath their feet. Zack looped back toward the entrance but didn't see Dr. Onimo anywhere. To play it safe, he slipped into a nearby blind spot to observe unnoticed. Come on, Animo, where are you hiding? His eyes scanned sharply across the aisles and exits. Boom. With a thunderous crash, one side of the wall exploded inward. A massive creature burst into the supermarket, easily heavier than a hippopotamus, barreling forward like a living tank. But its appearance. It was just a giant green North American bullfrog, supersized and lumbering. Riding on the bullfrog's back was an old man with wild, unkempt hair that looked like it had never seen a comb. He wore a strange horned helmet and pushed up a pair of orange-tinted goggles. What I want, is right here. He declared with a sinister grin. Ah, help. It's a giant genetically modified bullfrog. The supermarket erupted into chaos as panicked shoppers screamed, abandoned their carts, and ran for their lives. Some were too terrified to even scream, frozen in place by sheer fear. There he is. Zack slowly rose from his hiding spot, eyes locked onto Dr. Animo, standing not far away. Target acquired. He raised the Carnitrix on his wrist, quickly selecting an alien and tapping the core. A streak of blood-red light shot straight up into the ceiling. Within that glow, a terrifying figure began to materialize. Ughhh. Another one. It's right here. That one's even more terrifying than the first. The people who had been fleeing toward Zack's direction immediately skidded to a halt, many collapsing to the floor in sheer panic. Some people were so terrified, they even fell to their knees in front of Zack. Whoosh. A tall, bandage-wrapped creature slowly raised its head. A blood-red crown was embedded into its forehead, and glowing crimson eyes peered out from between the wrappings. This was the mummy, one of the Carnitrix's terrifying alien forms. What is that thing? Is that a real mummy? Dr. Animo, still seated atop the enormous bullfrog, stared at the figure in disbelief. Though surprised, he wasn't terrified like the others. In fact, he looked thrilled. A mere mummy. Bullfrog. Crush him. Kruaik. The giant bullfrog couldn't clearly detect motionless targets, but under Animo's command, its lightning-fast tongue lashed forward, aiming straight for Zack. Kekaki tilde. Zack let out a low, chilling laugh. Whoosh. The bandages covering Zack's body suddenly unraveled, whipping outward like a nest of writhing tentacles. They snapped around the bullfrog's tongue, locking it in place. The giant bullfrog froze in shock. It jerked its head wildly, trying to yank its tongue back, but it couldn't move it an inch. Its massive form trembled in panic. Even Dr. Animo fell silent, no longer barking commands. This is. Animo's eyes quivered violently, his voice stuttering uncontrollably. His gaze toward Zack shifted from intrigue to raw terror. Because, as the last of Zack's bandages unwrapped, what was revealed beneath was a figure soaked in blood. What did it look like? Like a skinned humanoid creature. Those bandages weren't just wrappings, they were his skin. What kind of monster is this? Zack's glowing blood-red eyes locked onto Animo's. In that instant, Animo's aging heart lurched in fear. He let out a strangled gasp, and fell off the giant bullfrog in complete panic. As for the nearby civilians, the moment they got a look at Zack's true form, their eyes rolled back, bodies twitching. They fainted on the spot. What is a monster? Zack was the definition of one. Croak, croak, croak. With no one left to give it commands, the giant bullfrog began running wild, slamming into shelves, knocking over displays, even accidentally injuring a few fleeing shoppers in the chaos. Kahahe tilde can't let you run loose anymore. Zack narrowed his terrifying blood-red eyes. Time to end this, hard and fast. In the next instant, the bandages still wrapped around the bullfrog's tongue suddenly loosened, sending the massive creature stumbling forward and crashing to the ground. Before it could recover. Bang! 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 Zack's limbs snapped outward, launching a barrage of bandages from every direction. They coiled around the bullfrog's legs, body, and torso, locking it down like a prisoner under siege. At first, the bullfrog struggled fiercely, thrashing to rip apart the seemingly fragile bindings. But as more and more of Zack's bandages unraveled and latched onto it, the bullfrog's movements grew slower, weaker. Until it finally stopped moving altogether, wrapped tight like a fly in a spider's web. Mummy's binding finishing move. Sleep tight. Zack's blood-soaked face twisted into a grim expression as the bandages across his body tightened all at once, violently constricting the giant bullfrog. With a heavy thud, the bullfrog's limbs went limp, and it collapsed to the ground in defeat. Phew, done. Zack let out a breath, then turned to the crowd with what he assumed was a kind, reassuring smile. Everyone okay? Huh, why's everyone unconscious? Was the bullfrog that scary? Well, Zack, I mean, Sir Mummy, Ben spoke up from nearby, voice trembling. Next time before you ask that, maybe check a mirror first. Not far away, Ben stood frozen, visibly shaking and not daring to make eye contact with Zack. Gwen had her back turned to him, eyes shut tightly, as if in deep existential reflection. Ding. Host has defeated the giant bullfrog. Dr. Onimo forfeited all resistance due to overwhelming fear and fled the battlefield. Progress +1. Holy crap, Onimo actually ran off. Zack quickly looked around, and sure enough, Dr. Onimo was gone. Template progress. 5/100ths. You've reached a critical threshold. Carnitrix permissions unlocked, killer mode. Zack blinked and slowly muttered, killer mode. That sounded incredibly violent. And more than a little terrifying. System, what exactly is killer mode? Zack asked in his mind as he scanned the area, still searching for any trace of Dr. Onimo. The system responded patiently. Killer mode is a special feature of the Carnitrix. While still within your active transformation time, you can rotate the symbol on your chest to switch directly to another alien form. Seriously? Zack's eyes lit up with surprise. Without hesitation, he looked down and rotated the glowing Carnitrix emblem embedded in his chest. As the dial turned, the holographic silhouette of Heatblast appeared above it. So now, I could switch alien forms mid-fight, anytime, anywhere. Just like the original Omnitrix glitch feature seen in alternate timelines. If I want to track Onimo. Zack continued rotating the dial until it stopped on a new figure. You're the one. Whoosh. A terrifying red flash burst from his body again, pulsing with power as his form began to shift. Beneath the glow of the red light. Grr. Zack's spine began to twist and bend, his posture shifting into something more animalistic. His muscles bulged, and orange beast-like fur erupted wildly across his body. So far, it resembled the original Wildmutt form. But then, a massive, cross-shaped mouth grew across his face, splitting nearly his entire head open. Rows of jagged teeth lined the gaping maw, making the transformation monstrous. Error beast. Name pending. RUAR. Zack let out a guttural, feral roar, his face fully splitting with the motion, revealing the horrifying size of his jaw. Every one of Zack's aliens, they're all scarier, and stronger, than the normal versions. Grandpa Max, holding bags of groceries nearby, muttered in disbelief as he watched. It was honestly terrifying. The mummy ran off. And now something even worse showed up. Zack's deafening roar echoed through the supermarket. Ironically, it even jolted some of the fainted civilians back to consciousness. They had just finished celebrating the mummy's retreat, then turned around and saw the error beast. And promptly fainted all over again. Ah, what a tragic life hey tilde. What's going on? Why is there still beast roaring? In a narrow alley, Dr. Onimo sprinted at full speed, gasping for air as he ran. Did I accidentally provoke some terrifying monster organization or something? I don't remember doing that. Whoosh. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind swept through the alley from above. Onimo's wild white hair whipped violently in the wind. He clutched his helmet to keep it from flying off, then slowly looked upward in fear. Above the alley, there was nothing. I'm scaring myself. Ha. Ha ha. Aahhhh. Just as he relaxed and patted his chest, he turned forward and saw a massive, tooth-filled maw looming right in front of him. He screamed and collapsed backward, scrambling away on the ground, sliding on his butt in pure panic. He looked like he was about to cry. Got you. Zack smiled faintly. One clawed hand reached down and grabbed Dr. Onimo by the collar. Whoosh. Dr. Onimo raised his trembling hand and slammed the controller on his chest, activating the gene variator mounted on his helmet. The device instantly fired a laser beam, aimed straight at Zack. But Zack's muscular frame coiled like a spring, then exploded upward, leaping several meters into the air with ease, dodging the laser completely. The laser struck the pavement below and fizzled out. Creatures with this kind of power. Earth hasn't had beasts like that in over 1,000 years, Animo stared in disbelief, awestruck by Zack's explosive agility. But the next moment, Zack twisted in midair and dived straight down toward Animo. What did I ever do to deserve this? Animo wailed, suddenly scrambling on all fours, devolving into full lizard mode as he fled down the alley like a panicked reptile. Zack landed hard, just inches behind him. The impact alone sent shockwaves through the alley, lifting Animo off the ground and slamming him into a wall. The villain slumped to the ground, knocked out cold. Just then, police sirens blared from every direction. A dozen squad cars screeched to a halt, surrounding the alley. Officers jumped out, guns raised. Their aim shifted back and forth, between the unconscious Dr. Animo and the terrifying beastly form of Zack still looming above him. However, a few of the more timid officers had visibly trembling hands as they gripped their pistols. The difficulty of gaining progress is getting higher. Even taking down Dr. Animo early didn't give me a single point, Zack muttered with a sigh as he twisted the dial on his chest again. The silhouette of Ghost Freak, or rather, Error Ghost Freak, flickered briefly before vanishing entirely from sight. Zack disappeared in front of the stunned officers just as they surged forward to apprehend Dr. Animo. Good thing that monster left. If he had attacked us, one officer exhaled in relief, lowering his weapon. Many others felt the same, secretly grateful. Because if it had come to a fight, none of them would have stood a chance. After Animo was taken into custody. Back at the spot where the laser had struck earlier, a faint shimmer pulsed along the pavement. Tiny, almost invisible organisms began to stir, spreading, growing larger, quietly multiplying beneath the surface. By the time Zack finished reverting from his transformation and returned to the supermarket, Grandpa Max and Ben were already waiting near the checkout line. I figured that was your doing, Max said casually, tossing a snack into the cart. Handled it, didn't you? He smiled knowingly. Come on, let's finish our shopping. Of course, let's continue our vacation. Zack shrugged casually, looking relaxed. The group continued shopping in the supermarket, this time with even more enthusiasm. After all, with the earlier chaos, no one else was left to fight over the most popular items. Once they'd finished shopping, they spent the rest of the day sightseeing and having fun around Washington, D.C. By the time dusk arrived, they returned to the Rust Bucket. Inside the Rust Bucket, Grandpa Max was frying up fresh and oddly delicious bug burgers. Ben was proudly showing off his Riot Sumo cards, while Gwen sat nearby, watching the news on her laptop. Zack leaned back in his seat, resting his arms behind his head. System, I've got a question, he asked in his mind. What exactly are those key nodes you mentioned before? Ding. When the host unlocks enough aliens and gains sufficient strength, a key node is reached, allowing the Error Watch to unlock new permissions. Zack nodded thoughtfully. So it really was a structured progression. First, increase physical strength and unlock transformations, then, gradually open new permissions within the Error Watch. Step by step. Build a solid foundation. He took a deep breath, eyes glinting with anticipation. I wonder what the next permission will be. The progress from Dr. Animo was too small. I missed a big chance there. He regretted not using Dr. Animo to farm a wave of mutated monsters. Ding. Dr. Animo has successfully escaped from prison. Due to his fear of the host, he has revived monsters from an entire paleontology museum, drastically altering the plot. Progress +1 gained. Template progress. 6/100ths Error Skybreaker unlocked. Huh. Zack instantly sat upright, his expression stunned. Dr. Animo escaped prison. And that alone gave me a whole point of progress. That meant, Animo must have created a ton of monsters right after breaking out. Then where is he now? And where are those monsters? Zack's eyes lit up. I need to find him and collect this massive gift package. Excited, he jumped up, walking straight over to Gwen's side. He needed her laptop. This kind of jackpot couldn't be missed. Hey GWE. This is bad. Gwen suddenly turned her laptop screen toward him, her voice tense. I just saw on the news, mutated insects attacked a DC police station. Dr. Animo escaped and took over the Paleontology Museum. He's reviving ancient creatures. Washington, D.C. is turning into the prehistoric era. Unlike Gwen's panic, Zack's expression was thrilled. He clenched his fist slightly. Then let's go, time to wipe out some dinosaurs. To be honest, Ben cracked his knuckles, a crooked smile forming. I regret not helping Zack out against the last mutant freak. Both cousins now radiated uncontainable battle energy. Grandpa Max displayed extraordinary driving skills, drifting the rust bucket around corners, overtaking cars with ease as they sped toward the Paleontology Museum. Inside the RV, Zack and Ben were working overtime, devouring bug burgers. As Grandpa Max put it, eat while they're hot, then we head to war. But just a few minutes later, the rust bucket was forced to stop dead in its tracks. The road to the museum was completely blocked, cars jammed in every direction, even going the wrong way as people tried to flee the city in chaos. The land routes blocked, Grandpa Max said, frowning as he pounded the steering wheel in frustration. Then we take to the skies. Zack wiped his mouth, then confidently tapped open the Error Watch's interface and began scrolling through the alien options. As a flickering red light pulsed from the watch, he reached for the door handle and stepped out. Bang! A large, foul-smelling mutant bug monster appeared on the road. 4 long tentacles extended from his face, doubling as sensory feelers and energy emitters. His mouth was lined with rows of razor-sharp fangs, each one dripping with a viscous fluid that hit the pavement and melted straight through it with a sizzle. The Carnitrix's air stinkfly had arrived, with corrosive spit included. Let's call you. Ben hopped down beside him, grinning. Skybreaker. No time, Ben, let's go. Zack took off without hesitation, gripping Ben's shoulder with his clawed hand and lifting him into the air. Whoa! Ah! I'm flying. Ben flailed his arms and legs excitedly, his face lit up with joy. So this is what it feels like to fly. This is my first time. Hey, really? Zack's mouth twitched as he muttered under his breath, did he forget he flew during our first alien fight? At the entrance of the Paleontology Museum. The main gate had been completely destroyed. A Tyrannosaurus Rex with crimson, glowing eyes and a massive, tank-like body stomped out of the shadows. Each of its steps made the ground tremble. Trailing behind it were 2 woolly mammoths, each the size of a moving mountain. And finally, a Triceratops, its body thick and armored like a walking fortress, thundered out from the building's remains. Sitting atop the Triceratops's head like royalty was Dr. Onimo, gripping its horns like makeshift handlebars. Surrounding the ancient beasts were swarms of mutated flying insects, buzzing ominously above. Dr. Onimo looked around nervously and muttered, next stop, the Truth Prize ceremony. Once they see you all, they'll realize just how brilliant I am. He then lowered his voice, anxiously glancing around. But be careful on the way, what if that monster shows up again? He was clearly still haunted by his last encounter with Zack. Compared to those monsters, Dr. Onimo considered himself a 5-star model citizen. Whoosh! 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 A dark shadow suddenly zipped through the air above him. Zack soared overhead, gripping Ben by the shoulder. A sly smirk tugged at Zack's lips as he glanced down. You sure you want to do this? Absolutely. This is gonna be epic. Ben nodded with excitement, eyes gleaming. I've imagined this scene like 100 times. Whoosh! Zack let go without hesitation, releasing Ben midair. As Ben plummeted toward the earth, he slammed his hand onto the raised faceplate of his Omnitrix. In the dark night sky, a brilliant green burst erupted like a firework. Dr. Onimo instinctively looked up, only to see a towering, muscular figure rapidly descending from above. Boom! 4 arms, the Omnitrix's classic Tetraman, landed in a dramatic kneeling pose, slamming into the ground with enough force to crack the pavement beneath him. He slowly stood up, completely unfazed by the impact on his knees, and boldly declared, Hey, Dr. Onimo, you geek. I'm here to play with your little pets. You're here. Or you with that mummy and dog. No. You actually seem kind of cute compared to them. After the visual trauma of encountering Zack's error aliens earlier, Dr. Onimo found the appearance of 4 arms surprisingly pleasant by comparison. Cute. I'm a strong man, you know. Ben, now in the form of 4 arms, charged forward, fists clenched in fury. Trumpeting mammoths incoming. The 2 mammoths let out thunderous roars, lifted their massive feet, and barreled straight toward 4 arms. Ben gritted his teeth, flexed his 4 arms, and dashed in with full force to meet them head-on. Boom! The collision was titanic. Meanwhile, Dr. Onimo squinted suspiciously, his brows furrowing. Why? Does something feel off? He studied Ben's movements carefully. The monster I saw earlier today gave off a terrifying presence. He knew exactly what his powers were and how to use them. This one, it's like he's figuring things out on the fly. You're not wrong, Doctor. A cold, killing intent-laced voice echoed from above. Oi, Dr. Onimo. He tilde. Startled, Onimo instinctively looked up. PFF'd. A massive mutant insect suddenly lashed its tentacles, spitting out a glob of thick, corrosive mucus toward Dr. Onimo, burning the air as it flew. Bang! A giant cockroach buzzed into its path, trying to shield him, but was instantly melted into sludge by the acid. Wow, cockroaches. Are these the guys you're counting on to turn the tide? Zack, now in the form of the Aeroglide King, stared indifferently at the mutated cockroaches swarming around him. It's you. All of those monsters were you. Dr. Onimo gritted his teeth, finally connecting the dots as he glared at Zack. That's right. Zack nodded calmly. TCH, so what if you're transformed again? What are you gonna do, spit on me? Onimo scoffed, trying to mask his fear with mockery. Tyrannosaurus Rex. Bite him out of the sky. Roar. The massive T-Rex, towering at nearly 15 meters, let out a deafening roar and began to charge. With a sudden leap, it launched itself upward, jaws wide open, attempting to snap Zack right out of the air. Zack remained suspended in midair, unmoving, his fingers casually turning the dial on the watch. His expression was relaxed, even playful. Just as the Tyrannosaurus Rex took a massive leap, jaws wide open to bite him. Wait. Dr. Onimo's expression suddenly changed as he shouted, why is he glowing? Whoosh. A terrifying crimson light burst from Zack's body just as the T-Rex snapped its jaws down into the glow. Rumble. A golden, rapidly spinning sphere shot out like a cannonball and slammed violently into the T-Rex's skull. The sphere ground against the dinosaur's head with brutal force, showering sparks and shattering its teeth one by one. For the first time in its life, the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex was getting its head beaten in. It staggered back, dazed and nearly concussed. Roar tilde. Its once fierce eyes now flickered with hesitation as it took a cautious step backward, clearly afraid. The large golden sphere landed with a heavy thud, its surface pulsing before rapidly expanding. Bit by bit, it unfolded into a monstrous form, revealing a terrifying face beneath the armor. The Air Cannonbolt had arrived. His body was still clad in golden armor, his overall form and silhouette similar to the original Cannonbolt, but with grotesque differences. His face was streaked with deep, blood-red markings that reeked of decay and rot. His mouth, brimming with jagged teeth, was wide and vicious. As expected, Carnitrix creatures all had excellent dental structure, perfect for tearing and devouring. But what was most horrifying? As the Air Cannonbolt exerted the slightest pressure, countless tiny spikes emerged from between the segments of his golden armor, forming a thorny exoskeleton. And his teeth. They weren't just for show, they were the core of the beast. That symbol, the one glowing on his chest, that must be a totem. It's the source of his power. The thing that lets him transform. Dr. Onimo's eyes widened as he spoke, his breath quickening in alarm. Everyone. Attack. Bring that monster down. Zack didn't flinch. He calmly turned his head, glanced at the incoming Tyrannosaurus Rex and swarming insects, then called out with a grin, hey, my four-armed friend, what should I call myself this time? Call me the Four Arms. Ben shouted mid-battle, slamming a mammoth aside. As for you, you should be called. Even while fighting, Ben didn't forget the truly important stuff, naming aliens. And when it came to naming, nobody could top him. Let's call it Gorbolt. Ben shouted boldly. His uncanny talent for naming came through once again, saving Zack from his usual indecision. Dr. Onimo's face twisted with fury. These people, in front of his precious prehistoric beasts, still had the nerve to name aliens. Were they really that carefree? Boom. The Tyrannosaurus Rex stomped forward and charged at Zack's transformed figure, though there was now a flicker of hesitation in its eyes. Meanwhile, dozens of mutated cockroaches buzzed around Zack, swarming in from every direction. All of you, get lost. Zack immediately curled into a massive spiked sphere, his armor bristling with blades, and hurled himself forward with explosive momentum. Crash! The giant spiked ball smashed directly into the Tyrannosaurus Rex. In just one brutal impact, the colossal beast let out a pained roar, stumbling back, its body now riddled with dozens of deep, bloody puncture wounds. Don't even think about running. Zack rebounded off the ground like a living cannonball and slammed into the dinosaur again, then again. This apex predator of the ancient world was being completely overpowered, thrashed back and forth like a ragdoll. As for the mutated cockroaches, they tried to dive in, but the sheer shockwaves of Zack's violent impacts shredded them midair, their bodies bursting apart before they could get close. No chance. Absolutely no chance of winning. Dr. Onimo cursed, leaping off the Triceratops in a panic. Triceratops, go intercept Gorbolt. Cockroaches, take care of that 4 arms. Surprisingly, the mutated prehistoric beasts and insects actually understood his complex commands. The Triceratops immediately stomped forward, charging aggressively toward Zack. Triceratops, huh? Zack quickly adjusted his rolling trajectory, hurling his massive spiked form straight toward the oncoming behemoth. In terms of size, the two were hardly comparable. If the Triceratops was a raging tiger, then Gorbolt looked more like a massive orange cat. Boom! The two collided head-on. And the Triceratops's massive frame skidded to a stop, barely managing to clash with Zack's form at all. It couldn't even push him back. It felt like slamming into a boulder. Like crashing into a small mountain. R-U-A-A-H-H-H-R. The Tyrannosaurus Rex let out a thunderous roar and suddenly lunged from behind, jaws wide, trying to sink its teeth into Zack's exposed back, a sneaky ambush. The dinosaurs were closing in, compressing Zack's space to roll and maneuver. Meanwhile, mutated cockroaches swarmed Ben from above, persistently harassing him mid-battle. He gritted his teeth and stumbled back, using gusts of wind from his powerful punches to swat them away, but he couldn't defend against the mammoth charging in from the side. These bugs explode into disgusting goop when I hit them. I can't take it anymore. Seriously, it was nasty beyond reason. The tide of the battle had begun to turn. The Tyrannosaurus Rex and Triceratops flanked Zack from both sides, locking him in and giving him no room to roll freely. Ben, on the other hand, was getting smacked around now and then by the mammoth's trunk. Though it wasn't a serious injury, it still stung. This is perfect. Dr. Onimo clutched the gene variator on his head with glee, his eyes wide with excitement. Dr. Onimo, will finally claim victory. Ha 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 ha. At last, sweet revenge. Boom. Suddenly, Zack launched himself into the air, curling once again into a massive spiked ball mid-jump. He ricocheted off the heads of the Tyrannosaurus Rex and the Triceratops like a pinball. Bang. Bang, before springing high into the air and soaring away from the pincer trap. The two ancient beasts immediately roared in unison, charging after Zack as he bounced away. He's trying to escape. Don't let him get away. Dr. Onimo shouted, jabbing a finger in Zack's direction. Boom. Zack landed hard in front of Ben, the shockwave so intense it made the two mammoths hesitate and keep their distance. Cough cough. So, Zack, Ben muttered under his breath, lowering his voice quickly, you handle the bugs, I'll deal with the rest. If we don't split up, we're toast. Don't worry, Ben. Zack stood up slowly, resting a hand on the glowing pattern on his chest. Watch me activate killer mode. I'll take down the trainer of these Pokemon myself. Wait, what the heck are Pokemon and a trainer? Ben asked, visibly confused. Whoosh. A flash of light burst from Zack's body as a new alien slowly emerged from the glow. Its demonic grin made Ben shiver on the spot. Sorry, Zack muttered, voice distorted through his transformation. Wrong channel. Huh. Onimo froze, his eyes locking onto the strange roller-like appendages on Zack's feet. His face paled as he suddenly realized what was happening. Stop him, he shouted frantically. He switched to a speed type. Bang, bang, bang. All the mutated cockroaches, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the mammoths, and the Triceratops, countless ancient and mutated creatures, assembled in front of Dr. Onimo, forming a thick biological wall. It was a grotesque but formidable barricade, enough to give Onimo a sense of absolute security. Ha, it's done, Onimo exhaled deeply, feeling a rare moment of relief wash over him. You look tense. Want a smoke? A hand appeared beside him, casually offering a cigarette. Oh, thanks. A smoke to calm the nerves is just what I. Wait a minute. Onimo took it instinctively, but the moment his fingers closed around it, he froze. This cigarette, it was the exact cheap brand only he bought. It had come from his own pocket. And that hand, looking closely, wasn't even human. It was a massive, jagged claw. Anamo's heart thumped violently in his chest. Slowly, painfully, he turned his head. Standing right beside him, face to face, was the Mon XTR. Zack's Error XLR8 transformation. Bang! Without hesitation, Zack threw a brutal punch, knocking Anamo out cold on the spot. His claw followed up with a sharp slash, ripping the gene variator right off Anamo's head. With a metallic crunch, the device shattered to pieces. And with it, the reign of chaos began to crumble. All of the mutated creatures present suddenly lost their command structure, falling into chaos. They began to run and jump wildly, scattering in every direction. All right, Zack muttered, raising a hand toward the transformation pattern on his chest. Time to switch to Gorbolt and finish this. Wait, I just got a better idea. He paused, glancing into the distance to confirm that no one was around to witness what he was about to do. Then, without hesitation, he charged straight toward the Tyrannosaurus Rex at full speed. Is he serious? Ben stared, mouth agape. He thinks the Mon XTR can smash a T-Rex. That's gotta be a joke. Whoosh. As red light surged, killer mode activated. Zack's form shifted mid-run, Mon XTR transforming into Gorbolt. But this time, the booming Gorbolt retained the Monkstar's enhanced speed, blitzing forward like a missile. Boom. He slammed directly into the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The mighty dinosaur didn't even have time to roar. It was launched high into the air, its body torn and broken, vanishing moments later in a flash of energy. Up in the sky, the Tyrannosaurus Rex flew like a ragdoll, its expression dazed, its entire form mangled. It soared, briefly. Though its fate was sealed, some might say, the dragon had taken flight. And for a member of the Tyrannosaurus Rex family, that was legendary. The only one of its kind that had ever flown. How awesome. Bang! Zack slammed into the Triceratops again, sending it soaring through the air before it crashed into a distant lake with a tremendous splash. Even the two mammoths weren't spared, he took them down one after another with ease. Ben, no longer caring about how gross it all was, could only grit his teeth and start punching through waves of mutated cockroaches. In that case, at least my kill count won't be worse than Zack's. Cough cough. My goodness. Zack straightened up slowly, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. The transformation speed in killer mode is just too strong. Ding. Host has neutralized Dr. Anamo, defeated two mammoths, launched a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and sent a Triceratops flying. Absolute rampage. Progress +1. Template progress. 7/100ths. New extraterrestrials unlocked. Guy, Wildvine, and Ditto. The template can still keep growing. I just need to take out more enemies. Zack clenched his fists with excitement, grinning from ear to ear. 3 new forms unlocked. Hey tilde, this is amazing. Buzz 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 tilde. The whir of helicopter blades filled the sky. Police cars rolled in from every direction. Every branch of law enforcement was converging on the scene. Zack quickly calmed himself down and slipped away with Ben before the authorities could get a good look. Meanwhile, Dr. Anamo finally regained consciousness. He knelt on the ground, trembling, and looked toward the approaching police officers with tears of joy. You've finally come to save me. He cried out emotionally. I swear I'll do my research on those terrifying extraterrestrials from behind bars. Lock me up, give me food and shelter, just don't let me out again. Prison, after all, came with 3 meals and a roof over his head. A new day dawned. The rust bucket was parked along a misty forest trail, just beyond a wide lake where visitors were leisurely drifting by in paddle boats, enjoying the calm scenery. On the shore sat a young boy, quietly gazing at the water. Open personal panel, he said aloud. Personal panel. Host. Zack. Age. 11. Template. Carnitrix. Transformation duration. 10 minutes. Cooldown. 10 minutes. Killer mode. Unlocked. Progress. 7/100ths. Skills. None. Items. None. Unlocked extraterrestrials. Initial 10. The Mummy. Frankenstrike. Blitzwolfer. Gorbolt. Guy. Wildvine. Ditto. Physique. Equivalent to a strong adult human. Zach examined the panel with curiosity and muttered to himself, interesting, I just noticed something. Before Ben started naming the error-form aliens for me, the system listed them by their original names. He chuckled. Gorbold was totally one of Ben's names. The aliens that hadn't been renamed still retained their original names. ZZZZT. Beside him, a tall figure engulfed in flames stood proudly by the lakeside, a faint pillar of fire rising beneath his feet. Ben, next time you transform into Heat Blast, make sure you've peed properly. Zach said, exasperated, closing his personal panel. His face was covered in black lines of frustration. Ah, sorry. I really had to go. Ben replied sheepishly. Once he was done, he took off flying as Heat Blast, soaring along the uninhabited edge of the lake. Meanwhile, Gwen was in the shallows, splashing water and laughing as she and Zach played. You all woke up earlier than me, huh? Kids sure do love messing around in the water, Grandpa Max muttered with a yawn, watching them from inside the rust bucket. Today's plan was to go fishing on the lake. But clearly, Zach and the others had gotten up early and decided to turn the morning into a full-blown swim session before the boat ride even began. A few minutes later, Grandpa Max stepped out to the lakeshore in his slippers, just as Zach, Gwen, and Ben returned from the water, dripping and cheerful. Ben landed next to Zach, ended his transformation, and muttered, when I was flying just now, I saw something, like a dark shadow underwater. Kinda weird. A dark shadow. Zach narrowed his eyes. Could it be that lake monster from the original series? He grew more alert, instantly on guard. After drying off with towels and changing into dry clothes, the group was led by Grandpa Max to meet a local guide named Captain Shaw. They boarded Captain Shaw's boat and began heading toward the center of the lake. As the boat glided across the misty water, Captain Shaw began telling the legend of a lake monster, Kraken. But before he could finish his story, he suddenly slammed on the brakes. The boat jerked to a halt, causing Zach, Gwen, and Ben to nearly topple over. Right ahead, a massive vessel had cut across their path, blocking the route to the lake's center. Hey, what's the big idea? You trying to get yourself killed? Captain Shaw leaned out over the edge, shouting irritably. He had clearly entered full rant mode. Apologies, a voice called from the deck of the large vessel. A man with a close-cropped red buzz cut stepped forward. He had a kind expression, a solid build, and wore a light blue protective suit. We're with the Friends of Fish Association. We're conducting an environmental survey in the center of the lake. For safety reasons, the area is temporarily sealed off. Captain Shaw was just about to argue. But one by one, people in helmets and blue protective suits stepped silently behind the red-haired man. Their presence was intense, their posture disciplined, they didn't look like ordinary researchers at all. You're blocking us because of that big lake monster, aren't you? Ben suddenly stood up and pointed toward the center of the lake. What? A lake monster? Everyone on the large ship turned to look. Even Captain Shaw leaned out to get a better view. And there it was. From the misty center of the lake, a massive creature slowly surfaced, its green-blue body easily over 20 meters long, resembling a plesiosaur with a long neck and sleek aquatic frame. The lake monster had appeared. Zach narrowed his eyes. Zach, Ben said calmly, that thing's been tailing me since earlier. Let me handle it. Without hesitation, Ben activated the Omnitrix and slammed down on the watch. A bright flash. With a splash, a powerful merman-like alien dove into the lake. His limbs were built for speed, his jaw filled with razor-sharp steel teeth. Steeljaws had entered the fight. Ben. Zach glanced at him and said dryly, you don't need to use the lake as a bathroom, do you? Try not to turn this into a giant fish toilet. Zach, can you not? Also, call me Ripjaws. Ben huffed indignantly, then flipped his powerful tail and shot through the water like a torpedo, heading straight for the lake monster. If Ben's handling the creature, Zach turned slightly, narrowing his eyes at the buzz-cut man and his group on the large ship. Then I'll keep an eye on these guys. Sure enough, several of the so-called researchers were quietly pulling out weapons, harpoon guns, submachine guns, even grenades and other heavy arms. Fish Friends Association. Yeah, right. Gwen folded her hands. There was no way their identity was that innocent. Suddenly, on the deck of the large ship. Wait, hold on. A man named Jonah Melville raised his hand and pointed excitedly out into the distance. Don't act yet, look over there. What's that? Is that another merman? There's more than one lake monster. Gasps echoed across the ship. Haha, we're gonna be rich. One by one, the so-called researchers lowered their firearms and stared greedily at the spot where the lake monster was thrashing. Grins spread across their faces as they imagined their payday. Meanwhile, Ripjaws, Ben's current transformation, was locked in a fierce underwater wrestling match with the kraken-like creature, skillfully maneuvering around its tentacles. Jonah Melville raised a tranquilizer sniper rifle and took aim at Ben. Once those two wear each other out, we'll take down the small one first with a tranquilizer dart, then move in on the big one. Brilliant. Great plan. The subordinates eagerly nodded in agreement. One of them hesitated and asked, but someone's still watching us from the shore, what do we do about them? Idiot. Just a bunch of kids and two old people. Even if they know who we are, what can they do? Expose us. PFF'd. Jonah Melville sneered in disdain. At that moment. Click. Max slowly lowered his phone and turned to Zach. Zach, I just called a contact. These people aren't part of the Fish Friends Association. They're armed poachers, heavily armed. Yeah, Grandpa, Zach said quietly, eyes narrowing. I didn't get a good feeling from them either. And now they're targeting Ben. He slowly raised his wrist, tapped the screen of the Carnitrix, and rotated the dial to the eye guy. I'll handle them. Boom. A flash of blood-red light erupted. Captain Shaw turned slightly toward the deck, shielding his eyes from the burst of light. He scowled and barked, who the heck is shining a blinding light in broad daylight? Are you trying to get cursed out? Then he got a good look. Ghost. His curses cut off instantly. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed with a loud thud, fainting on the spot. What kind of monster is that? It's terrifying. Gwen covered her mouth in horror, her skin crawling with goosebumps. Even Max, who had seen his fair share of bizarre things, broke into a cold sweat. Standing on the boat was a hulking, deep yellow extraterrestrial with a grotesque, muscular frame. His shoulders, chest, and various parts of his body were split open by thick, inverted gashes, exposing raw, pulsating flesh beneath. And inside that flesh, dozens of eyeballs writhed and squirmed, constantly blinking in all directions. This was one of Zach's more disturbing transformations. Error variant. Eye guy. What's with their reaction? Zach let out a long breath as he stood by the lake, catching a glimpse of his reflection in the water. And immediately jumped back in shock. Holy crap. To be honest, he'd been transforming for a while now, but this was the first time he'd actually seen what he looked like in this form. And even he was terrified. This is way too freaky. Zach yanked his head back, shook off the chill, and then crouched low before leaping high into the air, his grotesque, eyeball-covered body soaring toward the poachers' large vessel. If I look this terrifying, then it's time to give these villains a real nightmare. With a resounding bang, Zach's body landed heavily on the deck of the large ship, drawing the attention of the poachers. What's going on over there? A monster, it's a monster covered in eyeballs. We've seen plenty of aliens before, but this one's on a whole other level. Idiots. What are you panicking for? He's probably with those lake monsters. The poachers stared at Zach, error eye guy, their expressions wavering between fear and confusion. The more timid among them visibly trembled, hesitant to approach. But the braver ones steeled themselves and raised their weapons. This group clearly had stronger nerves than your average criminals. I'm not sure what we did to upset you, Jonah Melville said with a strained smile, trying to keep his voice calm as he addressed Zach. Cut the chatter. Zach straightened his stance, his grotesque form flexing as every eyeball embedded in his flesh turned outward in perfect unison. Hand over the lake monster eggs now, he growled, voice distorted and inhuman, or I'll beat it out of you and take them myself. Then I guess there's no need for further discussion, Jonah Melville said, his lips curling into a cocky smirk as he gave a casual beckon with one finger. Behind Zach, one of the poachers suddenly raised a tranquilizer sniper rifle and took aim. He stared nervously at the blood-red eyeball on Zach's back, a creeping sense of dread rising in his chest. This eyeball. Could it see what I'm doing? Wait, why is it glowing? Boom. The eyeball on Zach's back flared with a blood-red light, and in an instant, a beam blasted the tranquilizer rifle to pieces. The shooter was flung backward with the explosion, crashing straight into the lake with a splash. Every eyeball on Zack's grotesque body began shifting, observing the stunned expressions of the poachers from every angle. He can see, with all of them. Someone muttered in disbelief. Every single eyeball on that guy provides him with 360-degree vision. Jonah Melville gasped. Open fire. Target the ones firing the beams. Clank clank. The poachers all raised their weapons at once, aiming directly at the glowing eyeballs on Zack's back. But just as they were about to pull the trigger, a blood-red glow surged across Zack's body. And then, every single eyeball lit up. Laser beams erupted from every direction, unleashing a storm of blood-red energy across the ship, raining destruction down upon the poachers in every direction. Countless laser beams erupted from Zack's body, sweeping across the poachers in every direction like a storm of blood-red death. Every single eyeball can shoot lasers. Someone screamed. Stop him, now. One by one, the poachers panicked, frantically pulling their triggers. Desperate, they tried to suppress Zack's assault with sheer firepower. But their bullets never reached him. The lasers vaporized the mid-air, along with the guns that fired them. One by one, the poachers were blasted off their feet by the relentless barrage, screaming as they were hurled into the water. This was the terrifying power of Guy's error variant. Countless eyeballs didn't just give him omnidirectional vision, they gave him overwhelming firepower. A walking turret. No, a godful arsenal. One poacher shouted before being blasted off the deck. Jonah Melville clenched his jaw so hard it felt like his teeth might crack. He stared at Zack with wide, disbelieving eyes. What kind of monster is this? Where the hell does he get that kind of power? And in just a few short minutes, nearly no one was left standing on the ship. Zack's figure flickered dimly, the countless eyeballs across his body now bloodshot and strained. He glanced around, scanning the wrecked deck. Are they all taken care of? He muttered. Weird, I took down a whole ship full of poachers, but I didn't get any template progress. He sighed in mild frustration and began walking across the deck. Eventually, he stopped in front of a large wooden crate and looked down. This should be where they're keeping the Kraken eggs, he mused. If I remember right, in the original episode, it was Jonah Melville and his crew who stole from the plumbers, triggering the lake monster's rampage. His memory of episode 3 wasn't as clear as the first two, but he still recalled the general plot. An enraged voice suddenly rang out from within the ship's cabin. A massive robot emerged, over 3 meters tall, its arms outfitted with dual cannons and reinforced plating. Jonah Melville was inside, seated at the control panel. His expression was wild with fury and desperation. Stay away from the Kraken eggs. He roared. Oh, so now you're bringing out the big guns Kiki tilde. Zack's back eyeballs immediately locked onto the robotic suit. Without panic, he gently set the crate aside and stepped to the side, completely calm. It all happened in an instant. Bang! The submersible robot raised its dual cannons and fired, unleashing twin beams of deep blue energy. Zack's back eyes retaliated with blood-red lasers. The two forces collided mid-air with a thunderous crack, locking in a blinding beam struggle. The red and blue lasers clashed, neither side giving way. Ha ha. What even are you? You think you can steal my Kraken eggs? Yona Meyer shouted, his face twisted in excitement. If one eyeball isn't enough to handle you, Zack muttered, eyes narrowing, then how about this move, huh? He slowly turned around, spreading his arms wide. His body arched back into a grotesque, unnatural pose. This angle allowed 5 or 6 of the eyeballs on his body to simultaneously lock onto the robot. Jonah Melville's face paled. Not good. He panicked and immediately pushed the cannon power to maximum. The submersible robot crossed its arms in front of its chest as it charged up a deep blue energy wave. Boom! Several of Zack's eyeballs simultaneously fired blood-red laser beams, converging into a storm of energy that completely overwhelmed the blue shockwave, engulfing the submersible robot in an instant. The mech, as if made of brittle plaster, shattered into countless pieces within seconds. Even Jonah Melville, seated inside, was blasted away with it, sent flying off the ship in a smoking heap. HMPH. What a bunch of clowns, Zack muttered, clearly unimpressed. Didn't even give me any template progress. Not even as useful as those ancient beasts Dr. Onimo unleashed. Shaking his head with a tinge of disappointment, Zack walked back over to the wooden crate. Bang! He extended a hand and blasted the lid open from the side, revealing a secure cultivation chamber hidden inside. Within the chamber glowed 2 golden kraken eggs, softly pulsating with faint light. Not far from the ship, Kraken had gained the upper hand in his brawl with Ripjaws. Using its immense size and strength, the creature struck Ben's merman form repeatedly with both fists in brutal, close-range combat. Ben didn't dodge. He gritted his teeth, eyeing the nearby paddle boats filled with civilians. Ah, if I wasn't waiting for those boats to clear out, he growled. You'd be on a leash by now, you oversized sea slug. Cree. Suddenly, Kraken paused mid-swing. Its deep blue eyes turned sharply toward the large vessel on the lake, its attention drawn to something. On the large ship, Zack lifted the cultivation chamber and hurled it into the lake. Hey, water monster, these are your eggs. I'm giving them back. Cree tilde. Kraken let out a long, resonant cry as its massive form, over 20 meters long and even larger than the ship, swiftly swam over. It gently nudged open the cultivation chamber with its snout, carefully retrieving the 2 glowing golden eggs. I already took care of the guys who stole them, Zack said, crouching at the edge of the boat with a faint smile. So maybe don't give my friend such a hard time, yeah. Kraken lifted its head and stared at Zack's grotesque, eyeball-covered form. And then, of all things, it flinched. Visibly shuddering, the mighty lake monster tucked its head in fear and quickly turned to flee into the depths of the lake. From the distance, Ben, still in his Ripjaw's form, cupped his hands and shouted, "Thanks, Terror Eye." It sounded like gratitude, but more importantly, he had casually given Zack's transformation a new name on the spot. Ding! Host has defeated the poacher gang, destroyed Yona Meyer's submersible mech, and returned the Kraken eggs. Progress +1. Template progress. 8/100ths. Apprentice plumber skill unlocked. Apprentice plumber. Zack blinked. The moment the words appeared, a flood of information surged into his mind, dozens of memories and techniques cramming themselves into place like puzzle pieces snapping together. It took him a few seconds to fully adjust. Languages from all over the world. Driving skills, for cars, boats, even basic aircraft piloting. Hand-to-hand combat techniques. Firearms handling. Tactical awareness. All the foundational abilities required of a covert field agent, downloaded into his mind and instantly mastered. If I wanted to join the plumbers now, wouldn't it be as easy as flipping my hand? Zack muttered to himself with a grin, a trace of smugness tugging at the corners of his lips. Extraterrestrial, sir. At that moment, a battered poacher lying on the deck suddenly called out to him, his voice weak and trembling. Zack turned to look at him. What? Haven't had enough of a beating? Or are you trying to beg for mercy to dodge your jail time? The poacher shook his head feebly. No, the ship, it's still drifting. If no one takes the helm, it might crash. Please, just let us dock it. Shut up. I'll handle it. Zack cut him off, then reached for the Carnitrix on his chest. With a twist of the dial and a flash of crimson light, he transformed once more. This time, a small black and white alien appeared, short, sinister looking, with narrowed eyes and a permanent V-shaped grin that made him look like he was always scheming. They say the ones who smile are luckier. Crack. Without delay, Zack split into multiple Ditto clones, each one instantly moving to a different part of the large ship, taking over navigation and system controls like a perfectly trained crew. Despite the chaos, the entire vessel was now under complete control, smoothly adjusting course toward the dock without a hitch. The large vessel quickly docked. Nearby, panicked tourists had already begun calling for help, so the police had arrived early on the scene. One by one, the officers escorted the captured poachers away in custody. On the deck of the ship, Zack's figure had long since vanished, something that actually made the authorities breathe a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, back at the smaller boat. As Captain Shaw's vessel reached the shore, Zack and Ben stood up and gave each other a triumphant high five, both of them grinning. That was awesome. Our teamwork was on point this time, Ben said with a proud smile, then added with a sigh, it's just a shame I didn't get to take down a powerful enemy like the lake monster myself. Zack nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, a strong enemy. Wait, Zack, when did you learn how to drive a boat? And that smoothly, too. Grandpa Max asked, clearly impressed. This watch gave me the skills, Zack replied seriously, raising the Carnitrix on his wrist. What the heck? My watch doesn't teach me anything, it's just a regular busted old watch. Ben protested. Maybe someone's just too much of a blockhead to figure out how to use their own gear properly, Gwen remarked with a smirk. And just like always, Ben and Gwen were back to bickering within seconds. It wasn't until Captain Shaw finally woke up that the lake had long since returned to its peaceful state, and everyone could resume their original fishing plans. Of course, Captain Shaw was still troubled by one thing: how exactly had he been scared unconscious in the first place? That night, the stars sparkled brilliantly across the sky. Zack quietly stepped out of the rust bucket and made his way to the lakeshore. He inhaled a deep breath of the cool night air, and suddenly, a thought struck him. I'm leaving tomorrow, I might as well take this chance to challenge the lake monster. If Ben's right, that thing is definitely a strong opponent. Just following the original plot and fighting small-time villains wasn't going to cut it anymore. His template progression would only get slower. That meant one thing: take the initiative, seek out stronger enemies and speed things up. Big Lake Monster, where are you? Zack stared out over the still, moonlit lake, preparing to transform and begin his search. Bang! A flash of green light suddenly burst beside him, and a sleek, fast-moving figure zipped to his side. XLR8. Ben, why are you transformed right now? Zack looked over in surprise, recognizing the alien instantly. Zack. Ben's mask slid back as he deactivated his transformation, his voice full of determination. I got wrecked too badly today, I want a rematch with that lake monster. Zack gave him a skeptical look. You sure XLR8 is the right choice for this? Ben grinned confidently. Come on, I believe in XLR8. What, you gonna start calling me a meathead like Gwen does? You don't think I know how to use my aliens properly? 8 minutes later. Zack. Ben tore across the lake's surface at full speed, and behind him was the furious Kraken, giving chase like a sea-bound missile. I'm almost out of time, help me. Zack sighed, annoyed. Seriously. You went after a lake monster without a plan. Fine, this is what you should use to fight something in the water. With that, Zack leapt onto the lake's surface. The moment his body hit the water, the Carnitrix watch flared with red light. A towering, blood-red figure erupted from the lake. Massive, muscular, monstrous. His jaw was filled with razor-sharp teeth, and his 4 sinister eyes gleamed, each with twin pupils staring in different directions. His entire body was a wall of raw, bulging muscle, stronger and more grotesque than even 4 Arms himself. This wasn't just a brute force alien. This was Zack's terrifying new evolution. Tetra Terror, ready to brawl. Ben jumped behind Zack in a panic. I thought using XLR8 would mean the Kraken couldn't hit me, but turns out I can't land a hit on her either. So frustrating. Zack stood tall, planting all 4 feet solidly on the lake's surface. Leave it to me. I've been wanting a proper match with this lake monster anyway. He flexed all 4 of his massive arms, spreading them wide, ready to meet the Kraken head-on. Boom. The Kraken slammed into Zack's chest with tremendous force, but Zack only staggered slightly before regaining balance, holding his ground with ease. His strength surpassed the Kraken's. Agitated by the failed impact, the Kraken roared and began thrashing harder, launching into a relentless close-range assault, trying to overpower Zack through brute force. Zack grinned. If it's just a test of strength, that's boring. But then, images began flashing through his mind. Combat maneuvers, wrestling takedowns, techniques from the apprentice plumber's training archive. His body moved instinctively, guided by muscle memory and perfect precision. With a sudden pivot, Zack wrapped 2 arms around the Kraken's body and twisted. Wham! With explosive strength, he hurled the 20-meter beast clean off the water's surface, sending it sailing through the air. The Kraken flailed mid-flight, eyes wide with disbelief as it stared back at Zack. Wait! They were just supposed to be pushing each other, weren't they? Oh my. Why the heck are you pulling off advanced moves like this now? Ben stood on the water, wide-eyed. Zack grinned, 4 powerful arms extended as he cracked his knuckles. What's the matter, lake monster? Never seen wrestling before. With fluid precision and overwhelming strength, he grabbed the Kraken once more and hurled her over his shoulder. Then again. And again. He moved like a seasoned pro, every throw clean and calculated, turning the Kraken into a ragdoll. Human close combat techniques, combined with monstrous alien strength, bam bam boom smack. It made Zack an absolute menace in hand-to-hand combat. The Kraken, despite her massive size, spent most of the fight airborne, flailing helplessly through the sky like an oversized fish trying to learn how to fly. Zack wasn't even trying to seriously injure her, it was all pure grappling skill and overwhelming dominance. Not very damaging, but utterly humiliating. I thought forearms was just supposed to smash stuff, or lift enemies and throw them once or twice. Ben scratched his cheek awkwardly as he watched Zack flip the Kraken like a WWE champion. You can do this kinda stuff. Where the heck can I learn that? Hey watch. Teach me too. Boom. Zack hurled the Kraken into the air for what must have been the 18th time, then calmly stepped back a few meters. With a loud splash, the Kraken crashed into the lake again, this time her expression pale and miserable. She rolled onto her side in the water, and then, started vomiting uncontrollably, clearly shaken and dizzy from the repeated suplexes. Zack, you're way too strong, you even made the lake monster puke. Ben had already reverted to his normal form, staring at Zack with admiration, and a hint of envy. Ding! The host has defeated the Kraken and successfully made her throw up. Progress +1. Template progress. 9/100ths. Another error variant unlocked. Zack heard the system notification, but his expression didn't brighten. Seriously. That's the achievement. Made the Kraken throw up. Couldn't they have worded that better? He muttered, looking exasperated, then awkwardly reached over to the Kraken and gave her a few gentle pats on the back, like helping a drunk friend at a party. You're good, right? No hard feelings. With that, he and Ben quietly left the scene. Thus, the brief battle between alien and lake monster came to an odd but peaceful conclusion. Later that night, Captain Shaw, finally sound asleep after a chaotic day, was jolted awake by strange noises outside. Groaning in frustration, he grabbed his flashlight and stomped out of his cabin. I swear, this day has been nothing but nonsense. First I fainted out of nowhere, now someone's messing around in the middle of the night. Who's out there? He swung the flashlight toward the source of the noise. The beam landed on a massive, hulking figure. Evening, Captain Shaw. He tilde. Zack turned around with a grin, revealing a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. GG Ghost. Captain Shaw's eyes rolled back. Thud. Out cold again. Early that morning, the rust bucket rolled into a quiet little town. It was a peaceful place, mostly elderly folks enjoying their retirement, living at a relaxed, easy pace. Even the rust bucket seemed to slow down naturally as it entered. Grandpa, we've got two energetic boys here, and you bring us to Great Aunt Vera's retirement community. Shouldn't we be heading to a stadium or something? Ben groaned, resting his chin on the window sill, clearly bored out of his mind. This place is seriously dull. Dweeb, Gwen said, crossing her arms with a smirk. I don't think Great Aunt's house is boring at all. That's because you're practically a little old lady already. Wait, huh? Did you see that? That old man just did a backflip. Ben had been in the middle of teasing Gwen when his eyes widened, and he pointed out the window in disbelief. Gwen didn't even glance. She just snickered and said, "What's wrong? Is your little brain overheating again?" Oh yeah. Weren't you the one who totally freaked out when Zack transformed back then? And weren't you the one who got chased across half the lake by the Kraken last night? Don't think I didn't see that, doofus. You. And just like that, Ben and Gwen were back at it again, bickering like it was their favorite sport. Zack set down his GBA handheld and turned to look out the window. Outside, an old man wearing reading glasses stood motionless on his lawn. When he noticed Zack watching, he forced a smile. That smile looked off. Unnatural. My memory of the plot from this point on is kind of fuzzy. Better stay alert, Zack muttered to himself, a chill running down his spine as he turned back around. Kids, we're at Vera's. Remember to guard your faces. As the rust bucket came to a stop, Grandpa Max's voice turned playful. Zack and the others hopped out of the van, just as a plump older woman came bustling over to greet them. It was Great Aunt Vera. With a big smile, she immediately went on a face-pinching spree, grabbing both Zack and Gwen by the cheeks. Ho 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 tilde Gwen's cheeks feel the best. Aunt Vera declared with gusto. Zach's gotten thinner though. That's not it, Aunt Vera. Zach works out and has a swimmer's build, unlike someone. Gwen stepped up while looking at Ben with a disgusted expression. Huff, whatever. By the way, Zach, you should transform into Tetra Terror and let Grandma pinch you like that. Bet it'd feel super satisfying. Ben showed a shit-eating grin. Cough, cough, Ben, Gwen, stop talking nonsense, Zach muttered, giving them a side eye. Why isn't she pinching Gwen like that? Zach and Ben rubbed their cheeks as they followed Great Aunt Vera into the house, greeting their uncle along the way. Not long after, Zach casually made up an excuse and slipped out of the house. He had a clear goal in mind. He was heading straight for the yard of that strange old man he'd seen earlier. You're going to investigate that old man. Cool, count me in. Ben said, appearing suddenly. Oh my god, are you serious? Gwen's voice followed right after, sounding exasperated. Zach came to a reluctant stop and turned to see Ben and Gwen walking toward him. You can come, Zach said with a sigh, but stay behind me. Got it. The three of them exchanged a few words, then quietly made their way forward. Up ahead, on the lawn, an elderly man in a wheelchair slowly rolled toward them. He opened his mouth, barely a few teeth visible, and croaked out a question. What are you kids doing here? Sir, we're just visiting our great aunt. We're out for a little walk, Gwen replied politely. Great aunt's house, a walk. The old man in the wheelchair repeated Gwen's words like a broken record. He mimicked her tone exactly and continued to block their path. That's weird, Zach muttered, frowning. Why does this guy keep repeating everything Gwen says? Ben commented. Maybe he has Alzheimer's, Gwen said with a hint of pity in her voice. Let's just go around him. With that, she and the others continued walking, choosing to ignore the strange old man. But just a few steps later. Wham! The old man suddenly launched himself out of the wheelchair with unnatural speed, landing directly in front of them in a single, fluid motion. He stretched out his hand and placed it on Gwen's shoulder. What is Alzheimer's? His face began to distort grotesquely, his skin cracking open and oozing foul green slime. Did you just expose me? Bang! Zach reacted instantly, launching into a flawless, high-speed strike. With a kick comparable to Bruce Lee's flying kick, he slammed his foot squarely into the old man's chest. Thanks to his adult-level physique and close combat training, Zach's kick sent the old man flying. The man crashed to the ground with a heavy thud, and his disguise shattered. What lay beneath was a grotesque, yellowish-brown creature, a sludge puppy. Its entire body was made of disgusting slime, and its internal organs were vaguely visible through its gelatinous, semi-transparent shell. The sight was revolting. Yeah, bookworm, what's Alzheimer's? Is that some kind of alien race? Ben asked, wide-eyed and clueless. Day 2, Alzheimer's is a disease. Gwen snapped back, her voice tinged with lingering fear. Whoosh! A flash of blood-red light erupted. Zach had already activated the Carnitrix and was mid-transformation. I actually got kicked away by a kid. Am I really that weak? The sludge puppy groaned as it shakily crawled back to its feet, still in disbelief. But as it looked up, its face contorted in terror. Hovering in midair was a monstrous, blood-red silhouette, an error-variant alien so fearsome, it looked like a demon incarnate. More than a dozen blood-red tentacles floated in the air like a swarm of chaotic demons, twisting and dancing with eerie elegance. Occasionally, one of them brushed past Gwen and Ben, making the two freeze in place, pale with fear. The surrounding air grew noticeably colder, an unnatural chill creeping over the scene. Error variant. Ghost Freak has appeared. Oh yeah, did we come up with a name for Carnitrix Ghost Freak? Or will Carnifreak be good since he looks a lot more disturbing than the other variants? No matter what your ability is, Zach said coldly, using a fooling ghost against you is always the right move. He tilde. He gave a slight smirk and then raised his arms. More than a dozen writhing blood-red tentacles surged forward like spears, instantly impaling the sludge puppy's gooey body. The creature's form was riddled with holes, pierced clean through, pinned like a lab specimen. It trembled, barely able to speak. I'm immortal, it rasped weakly. Squelch. Zach's tentacles twisted and yanked outward at once, shredding the sludge puppy into dozens of slimy, quivering chunks. The torn slime wriggled on the ground, twitching and bubbling as it slowly began to reform, its grotesque body attempting self-reintegration. Gross and unkillable, huh? Zack muttered with a frown. Then he glanced down at Ben. Yo, Ben. Aren't you gonna name this one? Ben's lips quivered. This alien. I don't dare. Alright, then just call me Carnitrix. Zack sighed lightly, cutting off Ben's hesitation and naming the alien himself. Carnitrix, it is. Zack. There's more of those sludge puppies coming. Gwen pointed around in alarm. Sure enough, across the quiet little town, the residents of nearby houses had begun transforming one by one into sludge puppies, each grotesque and dripping with slime, swarming toward them from all directions. Time to fall back. Zack didn't hesitate. He immediately extended his blood-red tentacles, grabbing both Ben and Gwen. With practiced speed, he pulled them along and raced straight back toward Grand Aunt's house, rushing through the door and slamming it behind them. Inside Great Aunt's house, Max gripped a broom tightly, his gaze locked on Grandma and their uncle, who were slowly closing in on him. Vera, all I said was I was going out to find Zack and the kids, why are you acting like this? Max, don't go, Vera said, her voice unnatural and cold. Yeah, don't go, Uncle echoed eerily. Their faces began to distort, melting into grotesque slime. Aunt's features twisted horrifically as her skin dissolved, revealing a sludge-like form underneath. Max's eyes widened in horror as Uncle's arms stretched unnaturally, reaching for him. Bang! The next second, Zack's ghostly, ethereal form, his error ghost freak transformation, suddenly materialized in front of the two sludge puppies. Bang! 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 His blood-red tentacles shot forward with surgical precision, stabbing cleanly into the two sludge puppies and instantly tearing them into dozens of writhing, slimy fragments. Grandpa, I'll keep this short, this whole town's been overrun by these things. We need to prepare for a prolonged battle. Zack's voice was calm, but his eyes burned with fighting spirit. He was ready for a war. Alright, Zack. Just, next time, try not to appear so suddenly. Max lowered the broom he'd been holding in a death grip and took a long, steadying breath. He was a seasoned old-timer, there was no way he was afraid of Zack. He was just experiencing a slightly elevated heart rate and minor hand tremors, that's all. Oh yeah, he was not afraid. Thanks for watching.